morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take on this Friday, and what a wild ride all week. And we've been saying that all week, but it's true. And you take a look at what's going on today. Shoot, look, let's take a little look about yesterday. Now, yesterday, we started off the day pretty strong with the Dow. Dow up a couple of hundred points. We accelerated to the upside. We were up 600 points. We remained up about 600 points. Matter of fact, closed the day up 617 points on the Dow. These moves are pretty extraordinary, right? Then you look over at the NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ, a little bit of a different path. It was negative early, under some pressure, down about 100 points, but turned, burned, rallied, and got itself back up by midday. It was in a tight range the rest of this trading session. Finished the day up 127 points. That's the markets that we are in today. And a lot of that having to do with various catalysts each and every day. Yesterday, a catalyst being some of the concerns that were out there about the latest variant felt a little bit better because of some of the results, at least early on. Problem is, that's a very, very small sample set. So that's still something that's going to be a catalyst, I think, for a while now as we go through and start to find out more and more information and how far this is spreading with this latest variant. So you take a look over at crude. Crude, 63, 64, then it burned and moved to the upside, closed around 67. That was a nice little move to the upside and propelled those energy stocks pretty nicely yesterday. They were up about 3% on that move from crude. So 10-year jumped up about 1%. It was up about 145, somewhere in that range. That was a good catalyst yesterday for the financials. The financials were up about 3% yesterday as well. Bitcoin trading still in that same sort of range. We've been sort of in this area of late, the last couple of trading sessions, somewhere between 56,000, 58,000, somewhere in that range for Bitcoin. Today, we're seeing a little bit about the same levels, quite honestly, just above 56,000, 57,700. So very interesting to see that. So volumes, really, really strong volumes once again. Now, Wednesday, we talked about those volumes. We actually went over 54 million contracts. Yesterday, we actually were about 45 million contracts. So really seeing that volume, except today we are starting off very, very slow into this Friday. Maybe people are a little bit fatigued from all of this movement that we have been seeing. You look over at volatility, I talk about the movement, we're looking at volatility 27 to 31. That's a pretty decent range. Still haven't closed above 30, but closed right around that 28 level. So industrials were strong yesterday as well. They were up about 3%, led by Boeing, which was a 7% gain yesterday. Really a nice turn and burn to the upside from Boeing as well. Materials, they were up about 2%. Technology did lag a little bit. Semis were more flat than strong yesterday, but there were some standouts as well yesterday. Take a look at Kroger's. We've been talking about that name. That had an unbelievable move of about 11% to the upside yesterday. Peloton followed along as well. Starting to see a little bit more in terms of reopen too, adding to some of this. You look at the cruise ships, you look at CCL, you look at Norwegian Cruise Line, those up 9%, 8%, really strong. Airlines, Delta, American, United, all very strong yesterday. Casinos, we talk about that as part of the reopen trade. Really nice move out of MGM. We had some follow-up option paper. I know we had some option paper like a week or so ago. We actually had more yesterday, very large, about 10,000 of the upside calls being bought in MGM yesterday. We got Caesars and Wynn, all of that. Throw in the financials. PayPal absolutely ripped off the lows after getting a big sell-off towards 180, a little bit below that level, had a nice rip to the upside as well. JP Morgan followed along, Travelers followed along, Goldman Sachs, take a look at American Express, all of those participating very, very nicely yesterday. So we come into today, got the jobs report. It's been this wild week of movement. Some days we've had some moves like we did yesterday out of the Dow where it was just all strong throughout the day and just continued and accelerated into the close. And we also have had a lot of days like what we saw out of the NASDAQ where started the day in the negative, actually moved into the positive, and then exploded to the upside on the positive side of things. So the movement, the day-to-day movement that we have been seeing is pretty extraordinary, and the velocity of these moves, there is no doubt about that. So we start off the day today. We look at the Dow, it's up 100 points. Look at the NASDAQ, they're actually moving together. It was up about 50 points. That did not last long. Matter of fact, as you look at what's going on with the Dow actually started to accelerate a little bit and then started to pull back, not nearly as much as the pullback that we were seeing on the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ really pulling back. It was up about 50 points, then 20 points, then went negative, then down 250 points. Last I looked, it was down about 200 points. That's an extraordinary move, folks. That's something that you don't see very often, although we're seeing it almost every single day now over the last week or so. So it's definitely something that is very, very interesting and a bit of a change in what we were seeing. And you take a look over at the Dow, it got pulled down as well after being up triple digits. It was down triple digits. Last I looked, it was down about 50, maybe 80 points to the downside. First hour of trading, and a lot of different things could happen as we get deeper into the day. I take a look over at the volatility index, somewhere between the 26 area and maybe call it 30. It was as high as 29.50 just moments ago, but I saw that it was slipping a little bit closer towards those 28s once again. You look over at oil, 68, 69, sort of in that sort of area. Energy did start off the day up about 1.5%. Then we moved into the red. Then we moved back up about 0.5%. So that was strong. Those sectors, we are seeing some incredible movement there. As a matter of fact, you look over at the semiconductors up about 1% early, then they were down 1%. You look at technology, it was flat, then it was down 1.5%. Hence that big move that we are seeing out of the NASDAQ that's down a couple of hundred points. Financial started off relatively flat, down 0.5%, then stayed sort of in that red area for now. We'll see. Things can happen. That maybe already is starting to move. We got plenty of movers out there. Speaking of movement, we've got Nucor, which started off the day very nicely, up about 4%. Semiconductors, not everything was going to the negative. As a matter of fact, one of my favorites, Marvell, having an unbelievable day to the upside. This is a stock that just about a year ago, almost to the day, about a year ago, pitched it on the 5 o'clock show, Fast Money. A lot of people very, very interested, in talking about it, but I didn't get all that much love on that one. But boy, is that stock taken off, and it's been on an absolute tear to the upside. The acquisitions of so many, and then every once in a while, we actually hear about the idea, well, maybe somebody's going to look into the acquisition of this thing. Well, they're probably not going to do it today. Stock's up 22% post-earnings. Absolutely crushed their numbers. So you've got that up about 22%, maybe even more. Take a look at Microchip. That's up about 3%. Look over at Xilinx. You look over at Applied Materials. All of those started off the day pretty strong, probably seeing a little bit more weakness as we've seen some of that weakness coming into the semiconductors. Talk about weakness. How about DocuSign? Absolutely getting hammered. Now, this is one of those names that I've talked about for well over a year now that you've heard me with, whether it's been here or on television, talking about, hey, look, these triple multiples and quadruple multiples or no multiple stocks, yes, they're some oftentimes very great companies. Can they make money? That's part of the problem. And if they can, when? When are we going to see that being happening? Anyway, DocuSign definitely falls into this category, but you look at a lot of these, it's not to say it's not a great company. It is. Are people going to use it in the future? Absolutely. Is this just a COVID situation? Absolutely not. But was a lot of it pulled forward? And when we look at that, where that market cap went to, and valuation, if you want to call it, obviously this is another one of those very high multiple stocks that we've been talking about for well over a year. At some point, you start to see that bubble burst, and it's starting to burst in some of these names. We're seeing more and more of this as time goes on. So Chinese names also under some unbelievable pressure as well. You look at PDD, you look at NetEase, you look at Baidu, you look at all these various names, JD, all down anywhere between 4%, maybe over 8% to the downside, really getting hammered pretty good on some of these Chinese names. Speaking of which, here we are with the unusual. I've got the very first one, Chinese name, Baba. Probably the most familiar name for most everybody, Alibaba. Baba was trading about 111. It did hit a brand new low today, 52-week low of 108. And so it was hanging around 111 at the time where we saw these puts being bought in this name. We don't do this very often, don't talk about it very often because it's so much more difficult to have the read through puts than it is versus calls. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but we are seeing some huge put buy. So 7,000 of the December 90 puts were getting bought anywhere between $1.40 and $2.80. So aggressively positioning for even more downside out of Baba. As a matter of fact, as I look through, and it's very thin today, our volumes are going to likely be very, very low at the end of the day if we continue on the pace where we are starting out the day. We'll see how that actually unfolds. But of the early traders, a lot of puts and a lot of different Chinese names are part of those put trades that we are seeing so far. Baba, I felt, was the most interesting. I do have one that maybe looks like there's a chance for the upside, and that's Kohl's, KSS. Very interesting to see this stock. It was trading around 49, It's a stock that just below 49. It's a stock that's been a little bit all over the place, but you look from a fundamental standpoint, when you look at the balance sheet's pretty solid, trades at a very solid PE, but is this a company that can continue a turn that it looked like it maybe had started? We'll see, but we did see some buyers yesterday or this morning, 2,000 December of 53 calls. So it's the 49 strike. They're December 53 calls. These are going for 83 cents up to about 90 cents for those calls. Interesting to see this one. Very, very thin paper. I will remind you again of what we are seeing so far. So very thin, seeing a lot of puts being bought out in some of these Chinese names. Still aren't seeing energy come back the way we would like to, because we talked about it for well over a year. All of those beta energies that were hitting on a day in and day out basis, that pulled back a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, and we are still not seeing a very big return. We've seen a little bit of paper, not seeing the same, nothing close to what we had been seeing. So interesting to watch that. We'll see, and we'll continue to monitor to see if we start to see some of these energy names start to kick back in, if we see oil start to maybe break more up to the upside after that 85 down to 64.5. And then today we're talking about stock or crude trading a little bit closer to 68, 69. Folks, have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. Be smart, be disciplined. I'll talk to you on Monday. See you.